Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. J.T. Evans, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Well, hello there, everybody. I'm J.T. Evans, author of Urban Fantasy series, Sword and Sorcery series, and currently in the midst of polishing off a traditional fantasy trilogy that I hope to get out next year. Maybe later this year, starting, depends on how fast I write. Don't currently have a day job, but I got laid off in August, unfortunately, but I do computer stuff, whether that's software engineering, computer security, web development, all that good stuff. Basically anything but building networks I have done or currently do.
Now, you say traditional fantasy. Do you mean like the kind of stuff like Tolkien-esque vibe?
Yeah, be a Tolkien-esque vibe. Yeah, I'm not, using Middle Earth or any of his works, obviously, for obvious copyright reasons. But yeah, it's probably more in line with McKiernan's work or who wrote the Midkemia series? Raymond Feist. It's probably closer to Raymond Feist than Tolkien.
Okay. Nice. Is it going to be the traditional fantasy length, like the Brandon Sanderson-esque tome that will kill you if you drop it on your foot?
No, not quite. They are longer than my urban fantasy and sword and sorceries by a good chunk, probably a third bigger. But they're not in the multiple hundreds of thousands of words per book. Each
just
book,
as well.
Yeah, each book lands a little north of 100,000 words. And I'm in the midst of writing book 3, which I thought I'd be in the midst of editing it, but I haven't touched it for 12 years. So I opened up the file Saturday and discovered that I'd only written 5 chapters. And I was like, oh no, the book's actually not done. I gotta finish writing the thing before I can turn around and editing it. Right. So, but the first 2 are in the can. Yeah. But the first 2 are in the can, ready to go based whatever feedback my beta reader editor gives me. So I'm done with them until I get the feedback from my beta reader.
Nice. Are you self-publishing those, or are you sending those out through queries?
I have self-published all my current novels and short stories are all self-published. This I'm going to try to get traditionally published. I just have a feel that it would fit better with the Track Pub than self-publishing. So
I've heard that about traditional, like the more Tolkien-esque style, the European style fantasy. I hear that does better in traditional bookstores with Trad Pub. So
yeah, exactly. That's my goal. And then of course, if those plans fall through, hey, I've got self-publishing that I can do with it. So I'm not concerned with writing a trilogy that will go nowhere. It's going to go somewhere. It's just a matter of figuring out where that somewhere is.
Okay. All right. So before we get too deep in this interview, we want to knock the religion questions out of the park. So are you ready for this, JT?
I am ready to go.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
It's got to be Star Wars. I was almost 5 years old when the first movie came out, and it came out right around the same weekend as Family Reunion. And I was born and raised in Midland, Texas, and we had a 4-screen movie theater, and it was the only one in town. And it was also the only one for about a 60 to 70 mile radius around that remote area of West Texas. We had a ton of family coming in within that 60, 70 mile radius coming in, and they'd all show up at my grandmother's house and go, hi, we're here. Okay, we're going to go watch Star Wars now, because that was the thing to do when they got in town. Well, me being under 5 years old, I got in for free. So I'd grab my mom and go, hey, can I go with them? And my mom would be like, yeah, get out of my hair, go with them, kid, and they were okay with me going with them. I was not a problematic 4-year-old as far as 4-year-olds go. Anyway, over the 3 days of its opening weekend, I saw the movie 7 times in the theater.
Wow.
So Star Wars is my go-to. And the opening scene of Princess Leia's rebel ship and the Empire ship, Imperial ship, chasing it, and the blasters in the sky, or sorry, in space, and the sounds, and John Williams' music, just it gave me thrills and chills. That opening scene was amazing.
Okay. That's a solid answer. I love that franchise too. A lot of fond memories. Did you read the books as well?
Some here and there, mainly the Timothy Zahn ones.
Those were good.
Yeah, the first trilogy, I've read those. Outside that, I picked up a few here and there, but not extensively. I do have on the shelf behind me here the Stephen Barnes Star Wars book, the Mace Windu book that he wrote.
Oh, nice.
Bumped into him at Mile High Con 2 years ago, I think it was, maybe 3, and he was handing out one autograph copy throughout the con, and he was going to give it out to whoever asked the best question asked of him during his solo presentations or his panels, and I won. He picked me. So,
what was the question?
I asked about his collaboration efforts, how it's evolved over the many decades, because he started writing with Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell. I don't know what, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe 30. And he has evolved to co-writing and collaborating with other authors as a peer. And now he's doing collaborations where he's in the mentor role. And I asked him about his evolution over time of, sitting at the knees of giants and then becoming the giant that somebody sits at his knees. So yeah, that was the gist of my question.
I mean, it never hurts when you start the question by stroking an ego as well.
Right. He was very humble about it. He's like, I don't know if I'm a giant. He was very humble about his answer. So.
Okay. All right. And because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
I got to go with Narnia. Again, childhood memories. Probably one of the first, not the first fantasy I read. That was Terry Brooks. Probably it was earlier in my reading of fantasy literature that I discovered Chronicles of Narnia, and just the escapism of the whole tale. Going from London and hiding from the German bombing and all that, and escaping to a fantasy land where you can become the hero. I wanted to do that growing up, right? And maybe that's why I became an author, because that's my escapism. So yeah, I got to go with Narnia.
Okay, solid answer. Did you watch the movies too, or did you just stick to the books?
Primarily the books. I did watch the first movie. It entertained me. I had no real complaints, and I was old enough and mature enough to know that it was going to be different. It's a different media, right? You can't one for one replicate what's in a book in a movie. So I like the movie. I don't remember if I've seen more than just the first one, to be honest with you. I think I've just seen the first one.
Stick with that.
There you go.
All right. So one of the crying shames of adulthood is that we stop asking each other the important questions. So thanks for the generosity of our sponsors. We are bringing that back. I'm going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
I got to go with the Stegosaurus. It's got a big spiky tail, and I've always just thought that was so cool. I mean, just imagine that thing whipping around and stabbing into or smashing into the other predator dinosaurs that are trying to snack on it. So yeah. And it's a lot bigger than I thought. I mean, yeah, I know it's a dinosaur. They're all big and all that, but I always pictured it being maybe the size of a horse. And I currently live in Colorado Springs, so an hour north of me is Denver. And there's the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and the Denver Museum of Natural History. And one of those two has full-size Stegosaurus fossil skeleton. And it's also got one next to it that has like a not neoprene, but like a skin on it, like what they imagine it would look like, fully fleshed out. And it was super neat. And something I learned, they discovered, or at least they're theorizing, no way to prove it probably, is those big fins on the back. were full of blood vessels, and they don't know quite why, whether it was like a cooling mechanism, like built-in air conditioning, or if the males or females or both would fill it with blood to flush it to make like a mating ritual kind of thing.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I could see why it would work.
Right?
It'd be similar to there are other lizards that still do that kind of thing as a display.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I found that fascinating.
I've heard the other thing that's been cool with the for people that are a fan of dinosaurs is some of the auditory specialists have been going back to like some of the bone structures and the sound cords and all of that, and they basically like tried to recreate what those would look like in 3D, and then from there extrapolate what they might have sounded like.
Oh, that's neat.
Which is
okay.
Pretty cool. They use that same technology to recreate the Roman. You've seen the release where they're holding a really long pipe that's got like a dragon head at the top for a horn. They've recreated those. Those are actually scary sounding.
Oh, I would bet. Yeah.
They'd get your attention.
Yeah, I mean, some of the sounds that they've recreated, like the rebel yawn. I'm probably not allowed to say that as a Southerner, but I didn't find that intimidating. Maybe if you've never heard like the things we've heard in modernity, like maybe that is shocking. But even having heard all those things, that Roman horn, I don't know what it's called, but it's a really thin pipe that opens up. Like, dude, that would freak me out a little bit. It's got kind of an eerie sound, and the dinosaur sounds were like intense.
Nice.
And obviously, it's just speculation. They've also done that with some of the proto-humans, like the Neanderthals, Homo erectus, and some of the others. They figured out what they might have sounded like as well, which I just think is crazy that we can do all that. And it started with our AutoCAD people saying, "Hey, I bet I could 3D render this stuff."
Right.
And so some nerd with a computer program said, "Let me see if I can do that." And then a science was born, which I just, that's such a dude thing to do.
Now I wonder if you could take those renderings and 3D print them and then run air through them to emulate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I wonder if they could do some of that without actually printing them first. If they could like run a test run before they print them. I don't know how that any of it works, but it's still kind of cool that they were able to build it and sort of just see.
That's awesome.
Because it's as someone who like loves history, a lot of it's quiet and static, right? You're looking at things and reading things. So when you hear what they would have heard, that's kind of an awe moment, right? Especially when you go to some of the ancient places as well, and you stand in the footprints of history. There's something about that, which is why I like, back to what you're saying, Denver's Natural Museum. I've been to a couple of those throughout the U.S., and they're all awe-inspiring when you get to stand there and see those creatures that are just huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right. So we try to be civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I got to go with coffee. I've always found tea bitter, which I know coffee is bitter as well, but I've always found tea to be more astringent than coffee. So I've never had, now being from the South originally, a good sweet tea where it's sweetened as it's brewed, not after the fact. Because once you chill tea, you can't sweeten it properly. The sugar just floats to the bottom. But yeah, I'm a coffee drinker, and I take it black. Just nothing in it. Of course, I'm diabetic now. Thank you, family genetics. So I used to add a little bit of sugar, but all the artificial sweeteners in coffee I found they don't quite do the trick. So I just go black coffee now.
Okay. I like my coffee sweet. So I do like 2% milk, and then sugar-free syrups. But I have found, surprisingly, just because my son got it and didn't end up drinking it. So I tried it one day when I had a cold, and I just surprisingly liked it. I've been doing apple cinnamon herbal teas that are really, really good. Because one of the things I found is like drinking coffee was like a part of the ritual of my writing. And so when I didn't have that, it just messed me up. But I can't always afford the calories of the way I drink my coffee. So I'm like, well, what do I do? Well, tea has no calories because it's literally just flavored water. I mean, coffee too, if you don't have to add things. And so I've been trying the various herbal teas and regular teas to see what I like. And apple cinnamon tea and peppermint tea are surprisingly good.
Mm-hmm.
I can do apple cinnamon tea. Yeah, that sounds good. I may have to search some of that out.
And James, before he passed, sent one to my mom that was like an herbal, like berry tea that was really weird, but like hibiscus and berry and something else that was also pretty sweet. I just can't remember what it's called. I would tell you because I would have it at my house, except for my mom stole it all. I mean, she claimed it. She technically acquired it. There we go.
There you go. Parent tax.
Right? They shop at the pantry of their son.
Hey, she's allowed after many, many years of keeping you full. And
This is
if you were
true.
like any other teenage boy,
There you go.
that tax was pretty. I mean, I raised 2 teenage boys, and there were times that it's like, I just went shopping, and then you walk into the room, it's like, what have you 2 done?
Right,
So
right. I've only got
she's
the
owed a
one.
few packets of tea.
Yeah, I've only got the one, and he's 18 now. So gosh, the amount of food he ate from age like 14 to 17,
Oh yeah.
during those like 3-4 years. Oh my goodness, the food he consumed was crazy. He's kind of normalized now. He just had I got used to it. Probably I got used to it.
Probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And when you
Slow
see
down
that,
slightly,
it makes you wonder about those poor moms that had to like feed their kids in the caveman era when like they had to like wrestle dinosaurs for food. I mean, they're not really
Right.
facetious, but like, could you imagine like that poor mother looking at her husband like, go wrestle another dinosaur, kid eats all of its now.
Yep.
So, okay, so how did you, like you mentioned when you were 4 or 5, you watched the Star Wars in the theater, but is that your first like awareness of speculative fiction? Like, how did you discover the genre?
Yeah, that probably, now that you mention it, was my gateway into spec fic in general. Yeah. I actually didn't learn to read until I was in kindergarten. My mom was single mom, busy, and either didn't cross her mind, but nobody read to me. I didn't have book exposure until I hit kindergarten, and which is a little unfortunate, but I overcame that. And honestly, by the time I hit 3rd grade, I was reading at a high school graduate level. So I picked it up pretty quick because I loved it. It was my way to discover, I don't know, new worlds and new people and new things and the escapism of it. I'm going to use escapism a lot probably during this podcast because that's the key reason I read and consume. Because the real world is, well, the real world, and I'm tired of it, and I want to experience new and amazing things. But my gateway book into adult literature was Terry Brooks's Sword of Shannara.
Fantastic.
This was 1980, so I was 7 years old. The book had been out for a couple of years, and my grandmother loved garage sales. So I would go with her and navigate. I'd have the map of the city and the list of all the addresses she wanted to go to, and I would navigate her from one garage sale to the next. And then I'd go shopping with her at the garage sale and she would buy for me like the random toy or whatever it is I wanted at the garage sale. Anyway, came across this book that had this yellow, golden, glowing sword on it. And I was like, oh, it's a sword that glows. It's got to be able to kill a lot of people. Little did I know that's not the point of the sword. You learn that throughout the course of the book. But I was like, oh, I got to have this book. I got to read about the sword. So I take it up to my grandmother and I was like, hey, can I have a quarter to buy this book? And she looks at it, and it's a big, thick book, right? 726 pages. I've read it enough. I know how many pages are in the book.
I love that.
And she was like, well, that's an awful big book with tiny little text and big words. I don't know if I was like, it's a quarter. Let me try. And I probably tore through that thing in about a week. And it's up until a few years ago was an annual read for me. Now my TBR pile is, it's this bookcase behind me. The entire bookcase is a TBR bookcase. So I stopped rereading books so I could spend my time reading new books. But yeah, that's my gateway story there into adult literature, specifically fantasy.
Okay. What about for science fiction? For the written word of science fiction? Like obviously the big screen, it's hard to beat Star Wars in the theater.
Right. Gosh, science fiction written. I really didn't stumble into that until later in life when I discovered, no, this wasn't much later. Probably, I forget when it was, mid 80s. I had a subscription to Omni magazine that my grandparents paid for. and they serialized the Johnny Mnemonic novella from William Gibson, along with a bajillion other novellas and short stories and all that. So Omni Magazine was my introduction to science fiction, but most of the stories I don't remember. Either I tore through them too fast, or they just didn't strike me or stick with me. But Johnny Mnemonic did. For some reason, William Gibson's capture of this dystopian future where technology has risen to amazing heights, society has fallen to dismal lows, and those two aspects of his world have smooshed together to create the sprawl. And I remember finding Neuromancer, Mona Lisa Overdrive, and what's the middle book?
Oh,
It's Neuromancer, some other book, Mona Lisa Overdrive. They're on my shelf here. Count Zero.
yes.
Yes,
I think
Count Zero.
I know this one.
I had to look at my shelf. I still have the books, by the way. But anyway, just reading that trilogy and then most of everything Gibson's written after that has really opened my eyes to science fiction. I love cyberpunk as a genre. I wish it was more prevalent and more popular, but I still love William Gibson's work. Bruce Sterling, who else? Pat Cadigan is great. Daniel Keyes Moran, who's he only put out like 4 books total back in the late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, cyberpunk, that's another of my go-to that I love genres. As a matter of fact, I have a 7 novella series planned in a cyberpunk setting that I've created. And that's probably going to be written here in about 2 years, according to the plan that I've got laid out for me, things ahead of me. So, yeah.
I just love that you have a plan. I
Oh,
keep
yeah.
trying to have a plan, and then life happens, and my plan, the plan never survives contact with reality, but I keep
Yeah, I
trying.
feel you. That's why I have it in a spreadsheet. That way I can
You can just adjust the plan.
adjust the priority. Yeah. Let's see here. I just pulled up the spreadsheet. I've got 27 projects ahead of me
Sweet.
between, various short stories, novellas, novels, more novels, more novels, more novels, all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Do you say things like, I love it when a plan comes together when you
There
finish?
you go. There you go. Yeah, I am definitely a planning type human. Got to do outlines for my novels. I got to do outlines for my short stories. Of course, the say 8,000 word short story, my outline is probably 400 words, 500 words, something like that. So not as in depth or detailed as my novel outlines, but they're there. I got to do it, or I'll lose track of where the story's going, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad. So
I try to use the short stories to do something different than what I normally do, to kind of explore ideas, different types of characters. Because when you write a lot of military inspired fiction, you get a lot of the same type of characters because it attracts the same kind of person, be it male or female. So for me, I use short stories unless I'm writing in an existing world, or in a theme that requires it. I try to use short stories as a more fun way to explore characters I wouldn't normally write.
yeah, I do the same thing. Absolutely. I mean, with my software engineer background, there's a concept called fail fast. You're going to fail so many times before you get it right. So you want to iterate on your ideas in technology quickly to eliminate issues quickly until you can get to that minimal viable product or a good product. And when I got serious about my writing almost 20 years ago now, I knew I'd screwed things up because I was still learning a whole lot. I was in a great critique group at the time. And instead of trying to write a novel, and I've always wanted to be a novelist, instead of spending a year or whatever writing a full novel, I knew I'd screw up so many things about it and I'd get discouraged and maybe quit. So I was like, no, I'm not touching a novel yet. For 3 years, I did nothing but write a short story, sometimes 2, sometimes 1 a month, sometimes 2 a month. I would explore different aspects of the writing craft, different characters, different genres, different points of view, sometimes first person, sometimes third person, all that good stuff, right? Because I knew I'd mess it up, and I did. I totally screwed up a lot of stories, but I learned so much from that, like 3 years of failing fast, that at the end of the third year, I was like, all right, time for a novel, and I ran off and wrote me a novel, and then kept going from there.
Okay. Did you remember the Reader's Digest that took a lot of the classic stories and kind of condensed them into almost short stories? Would you read any of those?
My grandmother did. She loved those. And my grandfather didn't like it too much because he had read the originals, and he would grouse about the removed parts. I don't know. I picked up a few here and there. Like if we couldn't find the original, and my grandmother or grandfather said, "Hey, we think you'd like the story," when they were done with the Reader's Digest, they'd toss it my way, and I'd read it. But usually, I was deep into the fantasy and science fiction, and Reader's Digest didn't tackle that a whole lot.
That's actually why I like short content so much, because when I was younger, before I was old enough for Boy Scouts, but my sisters were already in Girl Scouts, I was the tag along. And so I didn't want to do the girly girl stuff. So I would like sit and read, and they had the Reader's Digest magazines that I would read. And it was all the short content. Like it would be short stories made even shorter, and kind of some of it was aged down, because Reader's Digest for a while had a version of the magazine that was like for younger kids.
Yeah.
And so I would like read content that was probably above my intellectual capability, but it had been dumbed down enough that it started like making you think, and that was always really fun.
That's awesome.
Now, did you mentioned you watched Star Wars in the theater? Were you watching Trek on the screen then, when it was the original series would have been out around the same? Well, actually,
so I watched the original series in reruns, but not originally. I wasn't around yet. So
that was the original.
That was the 60s. That was earlier.
Yeah, that was early. That was before my time. But I did watch the original series in rerun and enjoyed it quite a bit. Loved it. I thought some of the concepts I found, like, it puzzled the crew, but I figured it out really fast. And I was like, wow, I get it now that I'm older, but they were leading the audience by the nose, so to speak, to the solution, or maybe making the audience feel smart, because the audience was smarter than the characters on screen. But there were a lot of great ideas in there. I really enjoyed the original series. The Next Generation, the bulk of its airing time, I didn't even own a TV. I was out of my own poor, couldn't afford cable, let alone a TV. So it never really hooked me. Yeah, it never really hooked me, because I just wasn't an audience of TV at all, let alone for the Next Generation. So TNG wasn't my thing, and I kind of fell away from Star Trek after that.
Yeah, and then they came out with lots and lots of different versions, and you had to decide how dedicated you were to try to track all of the different versions.
Right, trying to keep up with all of it.
I was not dedicated enough.
Me neither. There's so much Star Trek stuff now.
There were apparently a bunch of books out in the expanded, I don't know if they called it expanding universe, but there were a bunch of books too. But I didn't know about. I mean, I found those out when I started writing. I didn't know those were a thing, but the Star Wars books were everywhere.
Yeah,
the libraries had them.
Really good, because the Star Trek books were really good. DC Fontaine did them. I believe Dean Wesley Smith dabbled in that universe.
He did.
You got some. It might have been. Was it that one, or was it? He did X-Files. He did so many things.
Yeah, he did a lot of tie-in stuff.
Now I have to go look. Talk amongst yourselves.
But yeah, no, Dean Wesley Smith did it. His wife, Kristen Catherine Rush, did some as well. We've interviewed her where she talked about that. It was, I don't know, I've never read them.
He's got Star Trek, Spider-Man, X-Men, Men in Black, and a whole bunch of others on his list.
Wow, he's been a busy boy.
I am told that a lot of the problems people had with the Star Trek series through the screen were all addressed in a way that made them real in the print. But unfortunately, I guess not enough people read the print, clearly. And then, of course, now you're like hunting a needle in a haystack, trying to find them, and then find all of them so you can read the series in order. Good luck.
Right. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Maybe ebook. Maybe they're probably way out of print, though.
Yeah, I don't know that all of them.
Some pals. You got to go looking places. We have a whole bunch of them because my husband's very fond of them, and so you find them in the secondhand stores.
Yeah, the problem is a lot of times the rights have already reverted back to the authors for some of them. So I don't know that they could produce them in ebook. I imagine the author could strip the serial numbers off and re-release them, but then they're not Star Trek anymore.
Right.
So
yeah, the series that really grabbed me was when I was 15 was Thieves World, the fantasy anthology series. Lynn Abbey and Robert Lynn Aspirin and Lynn Abbey. Yeah, they were the editors of that series. Yeah, and I probably scrolled away from the video to look at my complete collection. I've got them all, including I think there's 3 standalone novels that came along during that series. But yeah, I was in a bad car crash when I was 15, laid up for a very long time. And my mom was like, you can't go out and run and play for months. So you want books?
And
I said, yes. So she went literally a block away was our used bookstore, Miss B's Books. And she went in, she was like, what do you want me to get? And I was like, oh, they know me there. Just say you're here to shop for JT. They'll point you in the right direction. Because I was in there weekly, if not multiple times a week. And she went in and came back with like 3 big paper grocery bags full of books. And
that's a good mom.
Yeah, and Thieves World was in amongst, not the entire series because they weren't done with the series yet, but the first 2 or 3 were in amongst the collection.
Okay. So clearly what I hear is I've got more books I need to add to my TBR pile.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, like I said, we've said it several times. If you want to outsmart the genie about the not being able to ask for immortality, just ask not to die till your TBR pile's done.
Oh, there you go. Yep. There you
Never
go.
happened.
Or honest politicians. Either way, you're going to live forever.
Oh.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I want to talk about the books that brought us here. So we're going to pause for a moment. As much as I'd love to go down nerd history alley with you, I want to actually talk about the urban fantasy series that brought us here. So I'm going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly chauffeur the woman this time, and then we're going to dive into that the series that's on the title of this episode.
Cool.
In a world where magic is controlled by law and government, mages are both coddled and persecuted. Corey Monroe knows she isn't a mage, and her best friend is. Reality isn't always what you know. If you are looking for an urban fantasy with found family, an education-based magic system, and evolving storylines, try My Luck by Mel Todd, Book 1 in the Twisted Luck series. Available exclusively on Amazon.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And with that, we're going to dive right in. So we brought you here to talk about your Modern Mythology series, which we currently have 3 books in to that series. Is that series done?
Oh, no. Series is not done. Not at all. I have a partial outline for book 4 in the works, but I paused that for now because my original trilogy that I wrote that we discussed a little earlier, leaped up and grabbed me by the throat and said, do something with me. So I paused Modern Mythology efforts for now to work on that trilogy, and I'll be done with that by the end of the year and returning to Marcus's stories in the Modern Mythology series before the end of the year, and finish out that outline and start writing that book.
Right, but these have kind of a case files filled to them, so you could probably go on with with books in this series for a very, very, very long time. Are they, in sequential where readers would need to read them, or because they've got kind of a case files filled to them, is it something where they can kind of pop in and out and be able to catch most of the story?
You could read them in any order. There are things that I have set up in book 1 that kind of reveal in book 2. Same thing set up in book 2 to reveal in book 3. But it's not required to read them in order. There's just Easter egg things and like callbacks that aren't required for the current story that I make to the previous stories, so that the readers that have gone 1, 2, 3 get a deeper interaction with the tale. But no, it's not required to read them in order. They're chronological in order, but they're, like you said, case files are pretty much standalone.
So, where did you get the idea for the series that is the Modern Mythology?
So I live just north of Colorado Springs. Worked in Denver at the time, so I had about an hour commute one way, and then another hour. That's at a minimum. That's if traffic's flowing great. So that's 2 hours a day. I had to sit and think, well, drive and think about my stories. And I finished my fantasy trilogy, and I was like, I want to write something different. I like urban fantasy. I enjoy reading urban fantasy. I might want to write an urban fantasy. Okay, let's start there. That's my starting point. Okay, what do I want my main character to be? What do I want him or her to be? Who do I want him or her to be? I hadn't even decided on a gender yet. And I'm cruising down the interstate doing roughly the speed limit.
Allegedly.
Roughly, it was an approximate value. And all of a sudden, the idea of an immortal Roman Centurion who works as a bounty hunter for the deities of the ancient world slammed into my brain. And I was like, whoa, I got to write that down. I'll lose that. And I was just barely starting my commute. I was maybe 20 minutes from work, 10 minutes from work, something like that. It's like, by the time I get home, I'm not going to remember that nuance. I'm not going to have that still in my head. So I literally pulled over on the shoulder of the interstate, speed limit 75. So I stopped, turn on my hazards, throw up a quick prayer, please nobody rear end me. And in my center console, I always have a tiny little notebook and a pen, 2 pens, in case one fails. And just started scribbling, started writing about Marcus Barber and the immortal Roman Centurion. And I was like, okay, so threat of death is not a big deal. How do I make it a deal though? How do I make it a factor in his storytelling? And I was like, oh, what if he can die, but he just gets up a few days later, like trying to figure out what happened and has to physically recover from the death, and that's going to take like a week. So he's out of action for, say, 10 days. What if I gave him a deadline that's under 10 days on every single one of his case files, every single one of his missions? So it kind of started from there. That was the genesis of modern mythology. And while I'm brainstorming all this, the series title Modern Mythology popped in my head. So that got written down in the little notebook as well.
I love it. Now, one of my favorite things, because I've read Griffin's Feather and I've read several of your shorts, and it's a teeny tiny spoiler, but it comes out very, very quickly. One of my favorite things is the way that Marcus dies the very, very first time. Do you mind telling our audience the way that Marcus meets his end in the Roman Legion?
Sure. So he's in the Roman Legion. He is roughly 27, 28 years old. So he's been in the Legion for a while. He's experienced. He is in Germania as part of the Roman Legion, helping Rome attempt to conquer that part of the land, that part of Europe. And they have set up a siege outside a German clans like fortress, and they're using trebuchets to fire flaming tar into the fortress. And literally, it was purely by accident that he died the first time. A trebuchet next to him is going off, and one of his fellow centurions bumps him by accident. At least he thinks it was accidental. He doesn't know, but bumps him into the path of the big giant swinging counterweight on the trebuchet, and it smashes into Marcus. Well, human versus however many hundreds, thousands of pounds counterweight on a trebuchet, the human's going to lose. And so he got pulped pretty badly, and that was the first way he died. Being a good soldier, they gave him a proper burial. Of course, it's winter in Germania, so it has to be a shallow grave because it's hard to dig deep in frozen ground. And they leave him behind and travel on to wherever they're going. And 3 days later, he claws his way out of a shallow grave, and he was like, "Well, crap! I can't go back to my unit now. They know I'm dead. They're not going to treat me properly or well. So I think I got it set out on my own." And there you go.
Now, does he, obviously you bring it forward, does he, because you have a history for him, does he serve in other units? Is that how he bides time? Does he join the other side? Because, I mean, he's got a very specific skill set at that point.
True, he does. Yeah, he has spent most of his, let's call it ancient mortal careers as mercenary, just traveling from unit to unit to unit, traveling the world. Most of his jobs are for the ancients. That's what I call the deities of the ancient world. I called them the ancients so I could not have to call them god, goddess, deity. I do use the word deity, but ancients is capitalized because it's their group title, right? It's a proper noun in my books. Because there's a lot of ancient and a lot of modern higher powers that don't fall into the binary male female category, right? Categories. So because of the gender fluidity of a lot of deities, I just wanted to go with something that was gender neutral, and so I just call them the ancients in my stories. So yeah, there you go. So most of his jobs are for the ancients, and they pay him, and sometimes they pay him very well, so that he doesn't have to do like a job a week. He may go several months or maybe even a year between a particular bounty hunting gig for the ancients.
So is this, like, where is this book set? Is it set in the US now?
It is, yeah. The modern mythology part is set in modern day San Antonio. And I chose that city for a couple of reasons. One, I lived there for a year. I lived there from age 23 to 24 when I was kind of rebooting and resetting my life. I was going nowhere fast, which is pretty common for an early 20-year-old, person. And I was also in Midland, Texas, which had a very depressed economy. You couldn't even get it. There was a waiting list to get a job at McDonald's.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up bailing out of there, moved in with my mom and stepdad. They had given me an open invite to come live with them if I needed to, and I needed to. So I lived in San Antonio for a year, and also it's kind of a weird way to phrase it, but it was unclaimed as far as urban fantasy stories go. Jim Butcher has Chicago, Kerry Vaughn has Denver, Kevin Hearn has somewhere in Arizona, not Phoenix. Anyway, he's got Southern Arizona covered, and they're not protective of they don't disallow people from using their cities, but I wanted to veer away from the assumptions the readers would have. Because if I set my stories in Chicago and urban fantasy readers come to my tale, they're going to have Jim Butcher vibes in their head, which is a perfectly natural thing to do for a reader, right? And I didn't want to have to tear down what was already established just to reestablish something different in my books because it was set in Chicago or Denver or Southern Arizona. So I picked San Antonio, which is a very old city, huge city, wide variety of people. So many stories can be told without leaving San Antonio, just with Marcus. So that's why I set it there.
Okay, so right now there are the 3 books out. You've got, an endless list of possibilities.
Oh yeah.
Do you foresee at any point in time potentially doing audiobooks for these?
Yes, I would love to. There's one narrator that I have. When I was writing these books, I could hear Dave Robinson's voice in my head as Marcus.
Oh.
Yeah.
And Dave's a great friend of mine. I've known him for a bajillion years now. And when I first got these published through Wordfire Press, Griffin's Feather and Viper's Bane were originally published at Wordfire Press. I approached Dave, but his schedule was too packed to turn around the audiobooks in a reasonable amount of time. So he declined just because his schedule was busy. The rights to Griffin's Feather and Viper's Bane have reverted back to me, and I've re-released them under my own publishing company, and I have all the rights, obviously, to do audio. And I need to reapproach Dave to see if his schedule has loosened up some, to see if he's able and willing to do audio for the 3 books. If not, I may very well record them myself. I have an audio engineer that lives here in town. Eric Madrid, who I think you know, Jana, from Superstars. Yep. He does audio for Superstars, and he's a good friend of mine. He's an awesome audio engineer, great guitar player too. But he and I have made an agreement for my Sword and Sorcery series. Once I get that audio booked and recorded, he will master them for me. And I'm sure he would do the same for the Modern Mythology series as well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, the problem is sometimes like when you know narrators, but you know your book has a certain feel to it. You want kind of a certain vibe for the voice.
Right. Yeah, and Dave Robinson has the right vibe for Marcus through and through.
I can see that. If you've listened to any of our commercials where we've done the J.D. Sawyer's Suave Rob series, I'm going to play it. If you're cool with it, I'm going to play a sample of the commercial for Suave Rob. Dave Robinson dictated this commercial. So this is
there you go.
For it.
Well, hello, all you beautiful chicks and dudes of all sorts. This is Suave Rob Suarez, the bitchin' XX Daredevils.
All right, we didn't listen to the whole commercial because you sat through one, but that is Dave Robinson's voice.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of range to it. I just, unfortunately, with the commercials on StreamYards, like I can't fast forward to the various parts in there where he shows his range. It just, once you hit start, it's all or nothing.
Gotcha.
Anyway, but yeah, that's the voice that the JT wants for Marcus.
Yeah.
Now, when he fights, like, you know, this kind of has Highlander vibes with the way you're describing this, right? Is he the only immortal?
No, he is not. His father is immortal as well, and his father, say, went missing. Actually, just left his life behind when Marcus was a youth. And Marcus, after Marcus discovered his immortality, the ancients dropped hints that his father was still alive. And one of the payments that the ancients will give to Marcus for doing a job well is an ancient journal or a modern journal or some time period of journal that his father has written. And he scours these journals for hints as to where his father might be today so he can reunite with him. And then there's another immortal in the series, which is briefly introduced in Griffin's Feather and much more deeply explored in Viper's Bane, and plays a good role in Trickster's Laugh as well. So I don't want to go in depth on who that immortal is because it's spoilers. So you'll have to read the books to find out who I am talking about.
Okay, now do you have any secret societies outside of just him being immortal and the ancients, the ancient deities and such that exist?
Not really. The closest to that I've used is in Viper's Bane. I use a mercenary company that is actually worshiping a ancient deity called Mithras. And it's a Mithraic cult that raises funds by doing mercenary things, like violent, bad mercenary things. And Marcus has to infiltrate one of their compounds to go do good things. That's about as secret society-ish as I get.
You mean Mithra, the ancient Indo-Iranian god of light?
Yes.
Zoroastrian?
Yeah.
Okay. That's Mesopotamia, Iraq, Iran region for you at home. I've played in that part of the world, so I'm familiar with some of that history. Okay, so...
And Marcus does tend to be a white hat, so he gets himself in trouble usually, and for good causes.
Yes, he never breaks a promise. I think in the 3 books he breaks one promise, and it wasn't really his fault, but he still hit himself over the head pretty hard emotionally because he broke a promise without, it was kind of outside his control that the promise was broken, but he had made the promise, it was broken, and he goes through some angst over that.
Okay. So a man of character.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So I'll ask my mom question, even though I know the answer to it because I've read some of this kind of stuff. But as the listeners well know, I am a mom of a voracious reader or three, and so we always ask, kind of, what is our target audience with these books? Are we looking at preteens and above, teens and above, adults? I'm gonna guess it's not middle grade.
Definitely not middle grade. No, it's not no. Actually, my son, who's now 18, he was probably, 10 when the first book came out, 11, something like that. And he was like, "Dad, when can I read your book?" And I said, "I'll give you a copy on your 30th birthday." So, which was greatly, a great exaggeration. He was very disappointed. I think he was 13 when I finally said, "Okay, now you're old enough, mature enough. There are swear words in there. There's fight scenes. They are very accurate but not like over the top graphic. It's not like Kill Bill style, blood everywhere and all that. It's probably more along your kung fu theater type fighting, where and maybe a step above that as far as the violence goes. But yeah, so target audience, anybody that likes high action fights, both armed, unarmed, and gunfights of all kinds against other people and against mythological creatures. Anybody that likes that would really enjoy the Modern Mythology series. Age category, I'd be comfortable probably in the 16 or up, or mature 13 or up. And the mature part would be honestly for the parents to decide if their child can, handle this without learning new words, or at least without repeating the new words they learn.
Yeah, that's my kiddo is 13, and we've read the short stories, because you've got a couple of short stories that are in my anthologies.
Correct.
And those are some of her very favorites in the anthologies. She thinks that Marcus is absolutely hysterical. So yes, if you have a mature reader at a 13-year-old, she handled it without there being, any real questions. Like we say,
Cool.
a smattering of words that, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, she'd already heard at school.
Fair.
And everything else kind of fell within the tolerance ranges of a 13-year-old. So
right, yeah.
This is modern mythology set in modern times, but he is an ancient man trained in ancient ways. So do we see a resurgence of his gladius?
Not in the novels, no. He does have Roman-esque phrases, I guess. So he never says they put the cart or they put the wagon before the horse. It's always they put the chariot before the horse, or things along those lines. I tried to Romanize his sayings, or at least his thoughts, to bring out the fact that he's older than modern times. I do have one short story that I've written about Marcus, that it's set in roughly the year 400. No, when did I change it? It was like right around 250 current era, so 250 AD, however you want to phrase it, where he does get to use his gladius, and that's currently in front of an editor for an anthology. So we'll see how that goes.
So they would say that 250 ACE or after Common Era is how they would class that now. They don't do AD and BC anymore.
Right.
Mostly because the Latin for those was before and after death, and they realized that Jesus was born in year 3.
Right.
So, the terminology didn't quite work with the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah.
Okay. So he doesn't get to play a lot with his gladius. That's unfortunate. I like the swords.
No. Yeah, he does get into some knife fights and, like I said, unarmed melee.
Okay.
But no gladius on his hip in modern times. That attracts attention that you really don't want from the authorities.
Did he at least did he get to keep some of the artifacts of his past lives, or does he kind of ditch all of that?
No, he's got that laying around. Not laying around. Sorry, he's got a storage unit that he visits. It's mentioned. It's off screen. I never actually have him go there. I do have plans for, now that I've planted that seed that he has a storage unit full of ancient artifacts and his father's journals and other goodies like that. I have mentioned that a few times throughout the books. I'm actually going to have him go there in book 4 and set a scene there and describe what all's in there and let the reader experience the storage unit through Marcus's eyes.
So we've talked about Marcus, we've talked about the larger world and the deities that sort of and creatures that control it. Are there any secondary characters? Does he have any people that he's confided in that, hey, I've been around forever?
Oh yeah. So there's a handful. One of the first side characters I introduce is Eddie, who owns a dive bar, and Eddie lives in an apartment above the dive bar. Eddie's also a cat burglar. He pads his wallet by doing breaking and entering stuff. And at one point during Griffin's Feather, Marcus needs to break into a house, so he goes to Eddie. And actually, this is not a spoiler. This is set up very early in Griffin's Feather. Marcus needs to rescue an ice pixie, but Eddie is not in the know that Marcus works for the ancients, that he deals with mythological creatures, but he's got to rescue this ice pixie in front of Eddie, so he has to let him in on the know, and there's conversations about that. There's even a trip to Taco Bell at like 3 a.m. where Eddie is like eyes are open to the mythological world. The greatest confidant that Marcus has is Father Pedro, who's a Catholic priest, and he is part spiritual mentor for Marcus. He's also Marcus's emergency medic, because if you show up at the emergency room enough time, stabbed, shot, cut up, beat up, you're going to get a reputation, and cops are going to be called, and Marcus usually doesn't have time for that crap. So he goes to a Catholic church to Father Pedro to get patched up so that he can return to the field and resume his missions. And Father Pedro is in the know on Marcus's immortality. And actually, now that I think about it, circling back to your secret society question, Father Pedro hints here and there that he knows more about the other immortals around the world than he lets on to Marcus, and that's part of a organization within the Roman Catholic Church.
Do they explore? Because one of the things that I can't remember, it's been a while, but one of the vampires series that was set in the South, when the vampires come out, they interview some guy who'd been a Civil War, like at the Civil War. So all of a sudden, I want to talk to him. Is that something that happens where he like gets to talk to all these people that study the ancients because he was there and he can answer all their questions, kind of thing? Is that something you get to explore? Or is it too secretive for that?
Probably too secretive for that. And I think your True Blood, I think, is the series you're referring to. Yeah. Never read those books. Watched the first half of the season or so, and then life caught me, and I never returned to it. But
Same.
Yeah,
they were fun. It was a good read.
There you go.
But we're here to talk about your book, so I'm
sure.
People.
No, it's a little too hush hush because Marcus has come out to various people throughout the 2 millennia that he's been alive, with his true self, and the responses are so wide and varied. He doesn't know if he can trust somebody with the knowledge until he knows he can trust somebody. So just talking to random folks, hey, I'm an immortal. I've been around 2,000 years. You get locked up in the padded cell with the straitjacket on sometimes.
So they figured out, hey, we've had that same guy in that padded cell for 1,000 years. What the hell's going on?
Right. Yeah.
Of course, then it might really drive you crazy. So I had this experience recently, and I'm going to circle this back to your book, where somebody showed me on Twitter that young men in Japan are reenacting the early war in Iraq, my war, for LARPing, for Civil War reenactment, World War II reenactment. They are doing early Iraq war reenactments. And that got me thinking, because that was such a trip. I'm like, no, that's my history. What are you doing? This isn't. And so as someone, who's thought about doing some of the Roman reenactments just because it looks fun, have you explored what Marcus might think about those people dressing up in the period clothes and reenacting what he lived?
No, that is a brilliant idea having me stumble across like a SCA group or something, because I used to be in the SCA.
Well, there's the SCA is more generic.
Medieval, it's more generic and medieval than Roman.
There's actual Roman groups that like period uniforms, talking in the Latin, doing the drills. And then I imagine, because they're recreating to the best of their knowledge, they're probably even getting some of it wrong. Like for whatever reason, Roman movies and Roman drills, they love the testudo just because it looks visually cool. I can't imagine they're using it as often as we do in the literature. The turtle shell look, if with the shields do this.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. That is all right. I may have to drop that into a book.
Well, there you go.
Story or something. So yeah, grand idea. It never popped into my head.
Okay. And one of the things that happened, because obviously if his dad's immortal and he exists, that means his dad had the a romantic interlude at least once. So we know it's possible. We know that those relations can lead to little ones. Has Marcus had romantic partners that potentially led to his own kids, or at least love interests?
Absolutely, yeah. And he even ponders that. I forget if it's in Griffin's Feather or Viper's Bane, one of the two, where he's like, do I have immortal offspring that I don't know about that's looking for me? He doesn't know. So yeah, he that thought has crossed his mind, and I've delved into that here and there in my stories. So yeah.
One of the tropes with immortality in fiction and the way you're writing it is your body remains at the age you died.
Right.
Is that true in your world? Is it,
Yes, that's exactly how I'm doing it. Yeah. The roughly the age you died is your physical age for the remainder of your days. So Marcus looks like a late 20s, short, broad. He's actually not that short. He's like 5'11", but very muscular, very athletic. He keeps his physique in shape because he has to for his job. And so I have used that trope.
And then one of the things about that is they, and some of them, when you are immortal and you die and then you come back, right? Because it's not a permanent death.
Right.
Your body essentially resets to where it was when you die. So if you die a tub of lard, every time you come back, you have to get in shape, so to speak. Is that something that you've played with? Or, I mean, I imagine he was in shape, so it's not an issue, but you said there are other immortals.
Right. So when they die and come back, during the 3 days that they're dead, they heal, but that process of healing drains their physical capabilities so much, it takes another 7 to 10 days after that before they're fully functional. Like they've got to be spoon-fed for the first 2 or 3 days after they wake up, and then they have to slowly regain their stamina and their energy. The caloric intake of Marcus is insane. Even when he's not recovering from death, the dude eats like a ravenous tiger. It's crazy how much food I pump into him. But he's also highly physical, highly active. So it's like the crab fishermen. They have like a 10,000 calorie a day diet while they're out at sea because they're burning all those calories. And Marcus is the same way when he's on a job. It's go, go, go.
So how does that work for their first death if they don't know they're immortal? There's no one there to spoon feed their corpse.
Right. That is a longer recovery period. That's a harsher education on their new reality.
Okay.
So there's nobody there to take care of them, or they just got up from being dead and somebody knows they were dead and that somebody's nearby. So now they have to figure out how to survive a potential hostile, oh no, it's a vampire waking up, or what pick a mythos where something comes back from the dead. Usually things that come back from the dead are not pleasant beings. So the villagers that oh, it's a witch, burn them at the stake. Well, you're going to get burned and die again.
So my last question, because I could be here forever because I love history. So you're like hitting all my triggers for this one.
There you go.
Do other immortals sense each other? Can they sense the other immortals, the other creatures, the pixies, the griffins, the vipers, etc.? is there that sense of each other?
No, not at all. I actually veered away from that. I didn't want the Highlander effect or whatever you want to call it, right? The quickening.
The tingle.
Yeah, the tingle. Yeah, I didn't want to make it that easy on Marcus and the other immortals to be able to find each other. That they just kind of gotta figure it out on their own. It's not like there's a pen pal club either, so that, now when an ancient shows up on the scene, Marcus knows because they're rarely subtle about it.
Yeah,
and, right. The ancients want their presence to be known. Yeah. In some cases, the ancient only wants to interact with Marcus, so they will freeze reality for the 3, 4, 5 minutes it takes to converse with Marcus. But Marcus is not frozen. He's free to act and do and all that. And I have fun describing that in the various scenes where the different ancients have shown up and paused reality, like a big gout of exhaust that's just poof there, frozen as a cloud coming out of a truck, while Marcus and whoever have their conversation.
So, because most of us that are familiar with the ancient god pantheons are familiar with them either through vague memories of high school literature or RPGs, and in RPGs they use avatars because humanity, like your living creature, could not handle the divine awe, right? This is why the concept of the avatar exists. But you have the gods themselves talking to Marcus. So is that something you play in, like the radiance of their divinity, etc., makes an effect, or like how do you handle that in your book?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's fear. There, like when Marcus meets Venus in Viper's Bane. There's a particular physical effect on him since he's a dude and she's the goddess of love and beauty and all that, right? So that I definitely play into that fully. Also, normal humans and immortals should not make direct eye contact with an ancient. It opens your eyes to the greater reality that the ancient represents, and the typical mortal or even immortal mind can't handle that, and it leads to great bouts of insanity. Marcus has made that mistake before in ancient times. I don't have that story told. I probably should write that up, but I've alluded to that several times throughout my novels, where making direct eye contact with an ancient is a instant path to insanity.
Yeah, bad Jew.
Well, you also know when you're talking about predators in the wild, like you don't look them in the eye because that's seen as a threat, right? Like you kind of look down and back away unless you're prepared to engage. So I mean that fits in that respect as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. Because I don't want to keep you here all night, because Janice tells me she likes to do things like sleep and finish her yarn or cross stitch.
I have stuff to do, man.
Jana, did you have any questions? Because this is like the history side of things has just got my brain like all the stuff I loved, and I'm told I'm not allowed to do that again unchaperoned after that 4-hour episode.
Yeah, that's true. We're not doing 4-hour episodes anymore. No, I think we've covered a lot of it. A slightly self-serving question is, if somebody wanted to find your short stories so that they could get to know Marcus before they dove into Griffin's Feather, where might they go to find your short works?
All right, short works. So there's 3 of them out in the world right now. One is Dog's Days, which is a short story that you actually can get for free for signing up for my mailing list off of my website, which is jtevans.net. Or if you want the print version, you can run off and buy that as well. If you don't want to, share your email address with me, you can buy the ebook or print version of that. There are also the other 2 short stories are in 2 different anthologies. One is Ashes and Embers, which involves Marcus recovering a phoenix for the Egyptian god Ra. And the other Modern Mythology short that is out in the world right now is in Talons and Tails, which is a Griffin-themed anthology. And my first novel for Modern Mythology is Griffin's Feather, where Marcus encounters a griffin named Xerxes, and they team up to do things. Well, in Talons and Tales, Marcus teams up with Xerxes again to run off and do things, trying to avoid spoilers.
So did you write one for the upcoming Sand and Storm one that she's doing, the desert-themed one?
I did, and that one actually is not a modern mythology story. It is a Marcus Barber story, but it's set in ancient times when he's only been alive for a couple hundred years instead of a couple thousand years. So there's where you get to see the gladius come into play.
Okay.
So yeah, I decided to go back in time for Marcus for the Desert Anthology.
So it's a Modern Mythology universe story.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, yeah. Same Marcus, different time period.
Okay. Is there anything we haven't asked you that you think we need to cover before we wrap this up?
Just one other bit, and that is that I lean into mythologies and religions and beliefs from all over the world. It's not just Greco-Roman.
Right.
I have used poor word. I have borrowed. I have respectfully put into play, and that's a big thing for me. I do deep research on everything I use to make sure I'm treating it with the respect that it's due, because these are, like I said, ancients or deities that were once worshipped, in some cases might still be worshipped today. And I don't want to abuse or misuse someone's faith or religion while exploring it through my fiction.
And that the hard part when you use some of the other like ancient religions, because I've been there in my writing as well, is also doing it in such a way that you don't insult some of the modern religions.
Yeah,
could be problematic or not. It could be it's a tightrope to walk if you want to be respectful.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part. It really does make a difference. These books are currently available in print and ebook, hopefully audiobook coming soon. Are they Amazon exclusive, or are they in all the retailers?
They're wide across all the major online retailers. And if I've done my things right, you might even be able to find them in the library. At least the ebooks in library. I don't know about the print. If you go to books2read.com/JT Evans, you'll find my Modern Mythology and everything else that I have out there in all the various places you can find it online, both print and ebook.
All right, I'll add that to your show notes.
Cool, appreciate it.
And where might we find you? I'll list all of them in the show notes, but where are you most active if people wanted to track you down?
So if you go to jtevans.net, in the blue bar at the top is links to all my social media and other goods out there, including the books to read link, my Amazon author page, and all that. I am most active in social media on Facebook, which is jtevans.author, and on Blue Sky, which is just jtevans.bsky.social. I every once in a while play around on Instagram, but I always forget to put my covers up there. It's not deep on my radar, but I am there. So.
Okay. And you can find us, a dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We've got our Substack, our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only. People save the shenanigans from Adam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Be sure to put in the comment section, this is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts a duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee and hot chocolate and tea until they get high on their own supply. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee, the link is in the show notes. The discount code is Podcast Grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my overworked and underpaid and slightly crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. This sounds like a lot of fun, so you'll have to tell us when this comes out in audiobook. Share it to the groups or whatever, or get Janet
Sure.
to, because I will definitely dive into this one.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll let
This
you know when the
is-
audio is all ready to go.
Yeah, this is like my jam, but unfortunately, like my reading time is all focused on my own writing, so I do my reading with my ears right now.
There you go.
The drawback of the TBI is you gotta pace yourself. So,
Amen.
all right. So since we're talking about reading, before I hit the end button, I'm just going to ask you, what are you reading right now on your own? Since obviously you read other people's books too.
Right. So I have this big bookcase behind me. When I finish a book, I literally pull out dice and roll to see which shelf, which stack,
That's awesome.
which depth on the stack, because I have double depth stacks of books, and then which book. If I happen to roll like part of a series, like if I randomly pick book 2 in a trilogy, I'll just default to reading book 1, and then I'll
Because you're not a heathen.
Correct. And then I'll run through the whole trilogy. When I'm done with the trilogy, then I will repeat that process. So my last die rolls came up with Fred Saberhagen's Sword series, if you remember that from the 80s.
Good books.
And I have them all. And so I am almost done with the first omnibus, which is the first 3 books. And I have the second omnibus, and I have the collection of the Lost Book of Swords, 1, 2, and 3. I think there is something like that. So that's my current read. Is I'm going to churn through all of the Fred Saberhagen Swords stories before I don't know, roll some dice and figure out what's next.
Love it.
Okay. What about you, Jana? What are you reading?
Oh, goodness. I'm in the middle of an editing project that is taking up all of my reading time. But when I'm not doing that, I am reading A Touch of Luck? Dan Willis. I think it's A Touch of Luck.
I think we're going to add this, by the way, dear listener, at the end before we wrap. I'm going to put it before we do the sign off just to make it make sense, but what everybody's reading, because we like to pimp other people's books too.
There you go.
Well, that's true. When we are readers first. So yeah,
Yep.
Dan Willis has they're a 1930s noir kind of thing, but with magic.
Oh, cool.
And so there's the Arcane Case books, the Arcane Irregulars, and I think it's Case books that's the first ones, and it's in Plain Sight. It's not A Touch of Luck, that's a different one. In Plain Sight is the one that I'm reading.
Yeah, I just finished Spacer's book 1. It's so he did. If you're going to read the Spacer series by Scott Bartlett, save your money, use the credit, buy the box set for all 10 in one. It's like 56 hours. But I had been buying them along the way, and so book 1 and 2 is one audiobook, book 2 and 3 and 4 is an audiobook, and so on and so forth. I'm just such a fan. I bought all of them, and then when I realized I didn't have 8 or 9 and 10, I just bought the box set for the whole thing. But so I'm doing the audiobook, but then I'm like at the end of every book when he breaks to go into the next, I'm writing a review of each individual book for Upstream Review. So I just finished that, and then I'm going to alternate between 2 books of that, and then I'll go to the War Master to break it up a little bit. And so I will be going to War Master 5 next.
Nice.
Which is by Melissa McShane, which is the lit RPG. I just going between fantasy and sci-fi just keeps my brain ticking, and it stops the monotony sometimes if you read a lot of the same genre over and over again, which I like. But when you want to write a review, you need to be able to distinguish that book from all the others like it.
Yep.
And if I'm writing for Upstream and I'm just like, yeah, it's like all the others, the publisher probably wouldn't be too thrilled with that review. So
Strange how that works.
Yep. All right. And if you want to tell us what you're reading, dear listener, in the comment section, we would greatly appreciate that too. And you can start a discussion. And with that, I am really this time for real honest going to hit the end button. Wait for it.